set up one of the first 50 Lightning nodes on the network. I guess I made the third purchase for physical goods with Lightning when Blockstream set up their store. Everybody's telling you it's dumb, it's not going to work out, the government's going to stop it, but we believed in it, and we had this strong conviction that, it's going to work out. The price of Bitcoin went from under $100 to over $1,000 in like 1 or 2 days. When something's making a new all-time high, it's in price discovery mode. I think there's going to be a moment when people are like, I'm going to be left behind if I don't have Bitcoin. The thing that I love about Bitcoin is that it's cypherpunk. The cypherpunk idea is that you change it with code without their approval. Bitcoin should be strong enough to withstand any outside influence. Each person can download the whole blockchain, all the transactions, and verify that information is correct without any third party. I'm also bringing back Friendster. Friendster, the old social networking site.
I saw that you have been also pretty early in Bitcoin and in Lightning for even pretty early. Let's just start with what made you so early, so bullish on Bitcoin? What did you see? What 99.999% of the world did not see?
Yeah. So I mean, I follow Hacker News, a website, and I remember like in 2011, around then, people posting about Bitcoin, and I ignored the first few things, just like skimmed over it, but then eventually somebody posted it, and I was like, well, I've heard about this a few times on Hacker News, maybe I should read this, and I was right away, I knew that this was like kind of a revolutionary thing. I mean, it's grown over time as I've gotten to know it more. But at the beginning, it was like, whoa, this is a revolutionary thing. This solves a problem that's never been solved before. This could be huge. So I got into it, and then I wanted to buy some, but at that time, it was hard. Like there was no Coinbase or anything like that. Like you had to. I remember. I think it was Charlie Shrem's website. I forget what it's called, but like you had to wire money. You had to go to like Western Union. You had to Western Union some money, and then once they got it, you could get the. I set up an account and I was gonna do it, but then I was like, this is too much trouble, and it could be a scam. It seems kind of weird, like I have to send money like that way. So I didn't end up getting it, But then, later on, I got more into it, and then when Lightning came out, that was another thing where I was like, wow, this is something that could be really cool. So the hacker in me, was like, I got to try this out. I got to test it out. And so, I was on the IRC channel, like setting up a Lightning node, and set up one of the first 50 Lightning nodes on the network. And, I guess I made the third purchase for physical goods with Lightning when Blockstream set up their store. We're selling stickers and stuff. I bought some. So, yeah.
Nice. What is or was Hacker News?
Hacker News is it's a like a website where people can post articles and have discussions around different things that hackers are interested in, and it's set up by Y Combinator. The investment firm who's invested in like Airbnb and Coinbase and all those people. It's like a news site. It's kind of like a Reddit style thing, but it's like focused around startups and hacker stuff.
It's super fascinating for me because in the early days, it seems like there were only like Cypherpunks, IT security people, like the hacker people in Bitcoin, and now it evolved where like all those BlackRock, Larry Finks, and all those financial institutions come in. So like it made quite a journey, and it's just like a few, like 10 years or something like that, or 12 years, where it made that small journey from like, it's a really, really, really niche thing where some minority of people on the internet think it might be revolutionary, but it's also really hard to get to. Like, you can buy it literally in so many places, especially if you live in America or Europe. Like, it's super easy to get Bitcoin. It made quite an made quite an story yeah, basically in 1 decade or 1.5 decades, if you take it from the early days. Really interesting. And so you lived through that. How was the journey for you when you see in the starting where you couldn't even really nicely buy Bitcoin, and now you can have an ETF and the president is talking about it?
Yeah, it's crazy because it's like, I mean, if, like the people who were in at the beginning were like, everybody's telling you it's dumb, it's not going to work out, the government's going to stop it. And, but there's like, but we believed in it, and we had this strong conviction that, it's going to work out, and, or that it's worth, that it's like a cool thing. We didn't know it was going to work out, but like, we knew it was like this really cool revolutionary thing that has never been done before. And so we just like, so it's like just really cool to work on and like be a part of. And, but yeah, I remember it's, like, it is interesting because, well, I remember the first, at least one I like bull run I was involved in. I remember like clearly, there was like one day or 1 or 2 days. It was like basically 1 or 2 days where it went from like the price of Bitcoin went from like under 100 to over $1,000 in like 1 or 2 days. And I remember watching that and I was like, whoa, wow, this is insane. Like it's like something, people are, this is definitely, I don't know, that to me was like, this is it's getting legitimacy. Like this is serious legitimacy. And then after that, it was in the news and everything. And like, and honestly, like after that, people were like, "Oh, you're too late to Bitcoin." Like you're too late. Like because it went up to over 1,000, and then it was down to like 200 or 300, and people were like, "Yeah, Bitcoin's it's it's over, it's done." And but yeah, at that point, that's what made me realize, wow, this is something that could actually like become legitimate thing, I think. But
Yeah,
yes,
and
go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I just want to point out because, like, for the point from 100 to 1,000 is the same jump from 100,000 to 1 million.
Yeah.
It's not the same because you need a lot more purchasing power to get from the one to the other one. Obviously, is that something that you even think is possible again, or was it just back then possible because it was such a small amount, such a small market cap, or is that the mission? The point I want to get to is like, is the rule of diminishing returns true, or are we in this small upscale thing where it's like now 3% and we could all of a sudden jump to really, really high adoption, like this gradually then suddenly moment? How do you look at that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's in this price discovery phase. It's like we've never had this thing before. Like, what's it worth? And so, like the market's trying to figure that out. And, everybody has their hypothesis of what it's worth and stuff. But we don't know yet. It's still going, like the market's still figuring it out. And who knows where it will end up, what it's really worth. I mean, me from my perspective is I was a day trader for a while, and I've studied charts and stuff and trends. And I mean, there's one quote that I really love from William O'Neill, who's this investor who did like Investors Business Daily and stuff like that. He has this quote where it's like, it's one of the great paradoxes of the stock market that what seems too high goes higher and what seems too low goes lower. And I think that's true. I mean, that's one of the things I've done with my investing is like, when something's making a new all-time high, that's the time to buy. And when something's like making a new all-time low, like you have to have a good, it's not like you have to have a good reason, like fundamentally, like maybe Warren Buffett can do that stuff. But for me, it's like when something's making a new all-time high, it's in price discovery mode. It's like, we got to figure out what this is actually worth because we don't know. And I think that's like the case with Bitcoin. It's this revolutionary thing. Like solved a problem that's never been solved before in human history. It's like money for the internet. It's, decentralized. So yeah, what is it worth? And from my perspective, I've been waiting for, like from a trader perspective, I've been waiting for the moment when, and I don't think it's happened yet, when I think it will happen though, because I think there's going to be a moment when people are like, I'm going to be left behind if I don't have Bitcoin. Because there's still a lot of people who don't have like significant Bitcoin. I think there's going to be a moment where they're going to panic. They're going to panic buy because they're like, I'm going to be left behind. Like I'm stuck with this fiat, which is like not really worth much. I'm going to be left behind, and there's going to be a panic buying, which I think could take it from like 100,000 to over 1 million. Who knows? But I mean, yeah, who knows what's going to happen? But I do think I'm still waiting for that. I mean, it happens a little bit in every bull market. There's like a panic buying thing, but it hasn't happened where there's like, your neighbors and stuff who have never been into Bitcoin are like, well, we got to buy Bitcoin. I feel like that moment I'm still waiting for that moment.
The moment where those Bitcoiners that are known in their friend circles all of a sudden have like 20, 30 texts and missed calls of like, hey, how can I buy Bitcoin? What should I do?
Yeah.
That moment. I heard an amazing example yesterday, actually, on the podcast. My guest made an amazing example of exponential growth. And he said the example was there's a football stadium and it is filled with water. And in the first minute, you add 1 drop of water. In the second minute, you add 2 drops of water, and then in the third minute 4, and so on. So like exponential growth of how much water you give in. And the football stadium is at 7% full at 45 minutes. And it just takes another 5 minutes to 100% filling the football stadium. So like 45 minutes, it's 7%, and then at 50 minutes, it's at 100%. And this is, I think the human brain just cannot comprehend exponential growth. And something like Bitcoin is highly exponential, especially because the supply is fixed. I think we just cannot comprehend what this is because we cannot compare it to anything because there has never been anything close to what Bitcoin actually is.
Yeah. Yeah, I know I know there's a lot of variables that make this, I mean, that make it, I mean, when I first got into it, it's like, yes, solves this problem that's never been done before. It's money backed by math. It has a fixed supply. It's global. It's like global money. And it's, money for the internet. It's money like you can send an email, and it's like, send money like it's sending an email. So yeah, all those things combined make it this, super valuable thing. And that also, in terms of like from an investment standpoint, it's like those are the types of technology things like that can get insane hype too, which can make it like, go insane. But yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. It could go insane. How do you look before we come to maybe layer 2 things in your spaces? How do you look at the current developments? Obviously, we are at the price like almost 100K, but we also have this year the halving. We have this year Bitcoin ETFs. We have this year a president endorsing Bitcoin. It seems like a crazy year, and maybe it gets even crazier next year. How do you like the current developments? I also hear a lot of people, especially those who were early into Bitcoin, that they don't like that there are now so many traditional financial people like Michael Saylor, I guess, also is one, and Larry Fink, especially now coming into Bitcoin. How do you look at those developments?
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting when the president, is like talking, and a lot of politicians are like, we gotta adopt Bitcoin, because like the thing that I love about Bitcoin is that it's cypherpunk. Like it's, the whole idea was that you can't, like, it's way too slow to get the politicians to change, to like it's impossible. It's almost impossible to get them to change. Like by calling them up, writing letters, like we should, so the cypherpunk idea is that you change it with code, like you write code and it changes things like without their approval, like around them, like around, like it goes over the obstacle of like all that bureaucracy and stuff. And that's what I love about Bitcoin and cypherpunk stuff. So but it is interesting now. It's almost like, we've kind of like won, because it's like we went around and now they have to, and it worked. The cypherpunk thing worked, and now they are backing it because of the popularity of it, because it worked. So, I mean, but for me, really, the thing that I love most about it is the hacker aspect of it, the cypherpunk aspect. That I love how it works. I think all of them getting involved. It's probably really good from a price standpoint, and I think it's good. But really, what it comes down to is I don't think it should matter. Because Bitcoin should be strong enough to withstand any of that, like any outside influence like that. So I think it helps from a day-to-day standpoint, like the legitimacy and the legality of using it. But I don't think it. In some ways, it's a little bit like an attack on Bitcoin because it's the large amounts are getting into hands of people who may want to try to control it. So it's kind of a good test, but it should. I'm hopeful that it shouldn't really matter because Bitcoin should be able to withstand it and continue.
Absolutely, yeah. If it's not as strong enough to withstand that, it never was. So I think we are strong enough for that, and it's exactly made for being that money. And it's always funny for me when I see people that like Bitcoin and like the narrative, but they don't like when someone else adopts it just because they disagree with him. So like Bitcoin is also for your enemies. Bitcoin is for everyone, not just your friends and your like-minded group of people. So like even though people that you disagree with, they can also have a piece of that financial revolution. They will also have a piece of that financial revolution as the rest of the world. Speaking of the rest of the world, is then also really interesting how we come from this small asset that grows always faster, always bigger, and then we need also payment solutions. We need the all exciting things on top of Bitcoin, the asset. And the first thing that you also said, you made the third Lightning transaction, so you also were really quick to adopt a layer technology with Lightning. How satisfied are you with layer twos and the payment systems and use cases on top of Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think Bitcoin's and as I've spent years like with Bitcoin and thinking about it and working with it and stuff, at first it was just money, it's money, but then I've come to realize I think money is super important, the super important part of it, but I've come to realize that the thing that's super valuable about Bitcoin is the ledger, the block space, because it's this decentralized like ledger. It's this decentralized. There's space on it. There's space on this decentralized ledger that's super secure and verified by all these nodes, and backed by the power of all these miners. And so this space on the blockchain is really valuable, and you pay for it with a fee. Like you can get it for a fee. And so in my view, money was the first killer app built on this block space. Like money is super important to society, and it's a great use case for that block space. But I think there's other things that can be used for that block space. I think it's like I'm super excited, and what I've been working on and building is another use case for that space. So yeah, I mean, I could talk about that. Or
It's interesting. Before we go to spaces, why is that block space so meaningful? So you're seeing the block space of Bitcoin kind of like something bigger than just money. It's just like almost like a time chain where you can put things on there and it's always there for humanity. Is that where we're going with that?
Yeah, you can anchor things in the security of this of that block space. So Bitcoin's like by far the most secure proof of work blockchain, and so the space on it is super valuable uh, because it's where you can store information without a third party, and you can verify that, and like each person can download the whole blockchain, all the transactions, and verify that that information is correct without any third party. And so that space is really useful, and it's right now the main use case, and a very important one, maybe the most important one, is money. And that's a great use case. That's a great use of that space, is a ledger for money, to not need a third party to verify transactions. It's all, and it's secured. It's very secure. But I think there's other use cases for it. I think there's other important things in society that could use that would not hurt the use case of money. So I think there's other things that can tap into that and use that space that doesn't hurt the money use case, and that would be really valuable to society.
It's really interesting for me when we look at that, because I think no matter what you do, you cannot hurt the use case of money. Even if you like spam the Bitcoin blockchain, like you pay for that. You basically contribute to the security of Bitcoin. So even if you spam it, even if you put something on the blockchain that doesn't make sense in the beginning, you still contribute to the Bitcoin security overall. So I guess the block space is the representation of the free market. If you can sustain something long term and there's block space for your project, then it kind of has a legitimacy. It has something that is good on there. At least that's how I see it. But yeah, I'm completely focused on the money part, but yeah, maybe there are some other use cases on that. So tell me, what are you doing with, I think it's called Spaces. What is that? And why do we need it on Bitcoin, and why not somewhere else? Or I think the right now we're doing it with like normal providers of domains, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So just to give a little bit of background, I got into Bitcoin like 2013, and in 2014 I started a domain name company, Park.io, which was a drop catching service for domain names. And with that, I managed 3 different ICANN accredited registrars. I worked with registries like .io, .ai, and then .com and all that. So I really got to know the domain name industry and all the issues with it. And so, and tied with my Bitcoin interest, I realized like domain names should definitely be on a blockchain. They're just digital assets. There's no reason that they shouldn't be on a blockchain. Why should you need a third? It's just like with money with banks. Why do you need a third party to tell you what you can do? Or why do you need to rely on a third party for your name? Like, you just should not. It's absolutely not necessary. And it's also a huge risk, and it's an urgent need to get it on the blockchain because there's countless examples of like names being taken down, domain names. I mean, I can give you a few examples, like .cat, the top level domain .cat for Catalonia. The Spanish government didn't like what some people were posting on some of those domains, so they raided the offices of .cat and arrested the CTO for sedition, and they took down a lot of domains. And that's just one example. Another example is like Squarespace. There's a Squarespace hack. A lot of crypto companies were forced to rely on a third party for their domain name, and it was hacked, and a lot of people lost money because of that. And so, that's just domain names. There's also things with freedom of speech with domain names. So people, if somebody posts something that somebody else doesn't approve of, they can take it down. Or also just usernames too. Like people have their, for example, Twitter name taken away, or on various other social networking sites or stuff, their usernames are taken away. So yeah. So anyways, I realized like there's no need for this. I mean, another example is like when you encrypt a website with HTTPS, it's encrypted, but for your domain name, you have to rely on a third-party certificate authority, so it's signed with somebody else's keys, you know. So and there's no need for that, and it's a security risk. So there's this urgent need, and also Bitcoin is relying on domains in some cases. Like there's BIP 353. Matt Corallo put a for human readable wallet address names, and in it he has a really good, he really thought about it and talked about it, and he was like, it'd be better if there's a decentralized solution, but we don't want to have to rely on like another blockchain like Ethereum for ENS or something. So the best solution that he came up with, but he realized it wasn't ideal, is that DNS. But if somebody's getting, I mean, trust me, I know from managing domain registrars, it's like if somebody's getting a lot of payment to a wallet address that's just tied to DNS, like there's lots of people who could change that besides the owner of the domain name. And also a lot of companies you rely on are not secure enough to rely on that. Like, so yeah, it should just be, it's important. It's an urgent need to have your name. You should just be able to own your name and not have to rely on anybody else or ask permission for anybody else. And so that's what motivated me to start this other company, Impervious. And at first, Impervious was working on other decentralized naming systems like ENS and Handshake. But we came to realize that Bitcoin is by far the most secure proof of work blockchain. It should be anchored in Bitcoin. A decentralized naming system should be anchored in Bitcoin. And so we decided, we worked for like the last 2 years working on this new protocol, the Spaces protocol, which you can find at spacesprotocol.org. And it's a protocol built on Bitcoin, and it has cypherpunk ideals. We have no separate token, no separate blockchain, no foundation. We made sure that it's super cypherpunk. And also we kept in mind that even though we're anchoring it in Bitcoin, we're using the block space. We wanted to leave a light footprint, so it doesn't fill up the block space with large amounts of data. We build it really efficient so that it has a light footprint.
How is this working? There's a lot of question mark in my head, obviously, on that, but I'm also not the most technical person. I, in general, ask myself a lot, like, how do we decentralize so many problems that we have? We have like money. When we can decentralize that, we have a big problem solved. Then we have communication, like with Twitter and YouTube. There seems to be Nostra right now, the main one, how we can decentralize that. How is the Spaces protocol? Can I think about that more as a Lightning protocol, or is it more like a Nostra protocol? How does that from a technical standpoint work?
Yeah, so first it's we designed it to scale, so there's two different levels, two different layers. So it's similar to how traditional domains work. There's like, with traditional domains, there's a top level domain like .com or .io or .org. And then there's second level under that, like google.com or whatever, or bitcoin.org. So with Spaces, there's top level Spaces, which are on the Bitcoin blockchain. That's the part that's stored on the blockchain itself, the name. And then we designed a way to have second level Spaces. So for example, right now, actually, the name Bitcoin is in auction on the Spaces protocol. And so let's say you get that, you have at Bitcoin. So you have the top level, you win the auction and you get the top level space at Bitcoin. So then you could sell or give away or whatever second level spaces underneath of that. So like you could sell me Mike at Bitcoin. And we have a system to do that with zero knowledge proofs, so that basically I would own Mike at Bitcoin completely, like, and you would not have any control over it. And so I could use that. I could use Mike at Bitcoin in a completely decentralized way, and it's secured by Bitcoin. And so I could use like Mike at Bitcoin for, like, for example, with BIP 353 for wallet payment address. Like, you could send me Bitcoin at Mike at Bitcoin, or I could use it for a Noster username. Like, instead of like publishing my npub key, to Twitter and be like, follow me here, this big long string that you have to copy and paste, and there's no way you could remember that. Instead, I could say, oh yeah, follow me on Noster at Mike at Bitcoin. And for example, you could, resolve like a web page at Mike at Bitcoin, and it could be secured with HTTPS with no third party in between. It'd be, encrypted, signed by my keys and stuff. So yeah, those are the some of the use cases for it.
So you could also put that in a normal browser like a Chrome or Safari and get to the page, or do you have to get a special browser for that?
Yeah, right now we don't have the integration built in. So, but yeah, in the future we would like to. I don't know if it'd be a plugin or something, or we do actually have our own browser, which we built to resolve .eth domains with DNS. It was the first. We actually made the first browser that can resolve websites with HTTPS without relying on a third-party certificate authority. It uses this system called Dane, so that it's completely encrypted without third-party certificate authority. So we do have our own browser that we can integrate it into, but we may also like add like a plugin or something. And it could verify, it could verify the name and resolve it quickly, and it's verified, and it's backed by Bitcoin. The proof, so like one cool thing is, like, with ENS, with like .eth, it's super hard to sync a node, like a full node, to verify all the transactions. There's so much data, but with Bitcoin, it's something that you could resolve these with like a Raspberry Pi or something like that. So it's more scalable.
I partnered up with Coin Vigilante. This is the most beautiful Bitcoin timepiece that I ever saw created by anyone. Look at that beauty. I love it so much. Coin Vigilante made a perfect Bitcoin watch. That's the perfect, subtle, elegant way to go out there and show that you are a Bitcoiner. And that watch brand is Bitcoin only. And Coin Vigilante just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there, and of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece, and make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. If you watch or listen to my podcast on a regular basis, I guess you already bought some Bitcoin. And now the most important step is to keep the Bitcoin. Keep them secure in a hardware wallet. My personal recommendation for hardware wallet is the BitBox. It's super secure. It's simple to set up. It's also a perfect gift for a friend who has still their Bitcoin on an exchange. And you can get a 5% discount with the code Robin at the checkout. Visit bitbox.swiss/Robin to get your BitBox. And the next step is to really level up your sovereignty as an individual. You have to have the most secure self-custody setup. You have to secure your own devices. You have to protect your privacy. You have to set up an inheritance plan. And depending on where you live, you even want to have a plan B, a citizenship where you can move in case something goes really wrong. And through all those steps, the Bitcoin way is guiding you through step by step. And if you visit thebitcoinway.com/partners/Robin, you even get a 30-minute free call to find out how you can level up your sovereignty.
It's super interesting for me because it's one of the efforts to make the digital life a little bit more decentralized, because I talked with the guy from AIBTC, and I love that example because he just like has a website and Bitcoin. He only accepts Bitcoin payments and he only pays people in Bitcoin. So with that, he's completely outside of the fiat system when it comes to payment and money. So he doesn't need a bank account. He doesn't need a jurisdiction per se because it's just Bitcoin. But the website is still centralized. And if we can also decentralize that, so nobody can take away that website, nobody can take away your money, that would be kind of the future, the kind of the vision of the sovereign individual. I just have a lot of like it feels like it's very early on. It feels like everyone is used to just like go on the Safari, Google Chrome, whatever they use, and type in the address. Everyone is so used to that. So, but the same was true or is true for Bitcoin and fiat money. It's like a huge network effects that are playing to that. But what I was kind of wondering, how do we make sure that we use one protocol, that we use one Spaces protocol, kind of the same the same question that people have with altcoins. And I think my audience understands why we focus on Bitcoin and not all the altcoins, and we stay Bitcoin only, or like most of them at least do. What is kind of the argument of like the Spaces protocol versus maybe there are some other protocols that come up? Like how are we ensuring that there is not like 3, 4, 5 different protocols where you always have like a mic at a Bitcoin? How do we do that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. It is similar to Bitcoin. It's like anybody could fork Bitcoin and, call it Bitcoin 2 or Bitcoin Cash or whatever. I don't know. And so yeah, it's a good question. And I guess my answer is it is early. It's super early. I mean, but I know there's a huge need for this thing. I just have this strong conviction. Plus, I think it's verified by the market. I mean, some of these like ENS, valued at like $1 billion, like some of the and other companies that have done decentralized domains have been valued similarly. So it's something that's super needed, but it hasn't been done right yet. So my goal with Impervious and the Spaces protocol has been to try to do it right. Do it on Bitcoin, do it Cypherpunk, do it a way that scales. And so I think we have, we've learned from a lot of other things like Namecoin, ENS Handshake. We've learned what they did and what was good and what maybe didn't work out so well. And so that's what we launched with. And, maybe Spaces isn't going to be, maybe it won't be the one that's used, but I think it's a step there, and maybe it will be. I don't know. But, it's the first time that I think a serious decentralized naming thing is on Bitcoin that is done in a smart way. So I think it has a shot. But yeah, the determining factor, and I don't think it has to be a zero-sum game. Maybe a lot of people will use this, a lot of people will use that, but really the determining factor will be how widely people use it, and how useful it is to people.
And there's always, I just searched that, yes, here it is. Because a lot of people don't know that, but there has been a lot of developments before Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin was not just like this crazy innovative thing where nothing similar ever has happened before. There's a lot of technology, a lot of innovation that was developed before, and then Satoshi Nakamoto kind of built everything together. But the idea of Bitcoin, the idea of decentralized money in Bitcoin, decentralized money on the internet is not a new one. That has been around since like 1995, 1998. There are like a lot of interviews from other people that say like, oh, we need that, and this would be really cool. And I think is that the picture that I'm searching? Yeah, I think that is. Wait, let me quickly share it. I think that makes things maybe easier to explain. You probably know that that graphic, and there has been a lot of innovations, a lot of technology things that happened before we could have come to Bitcoin, because a lot of people also say when they come to Bitcoin, Bitcoin will be just like MySpace, and then there's a Facebook coming along and stuff like that, which is obviously BS. But I kind of imagine maybe a same thing for decentralizing domain names, a same thing for decentralizing other things. Maybe also Nostra. Maybe Nostra is not the main one that we use for the communication, social media. There might be another one coming. But I think the important thing here is that we keep going and that we keep like experimenting and developing and researching, that we have that vision of the sovereign individual in mind and try to think of like, okay, where are central point of failures and how can we eliminate those central point of failures? That's why I absolutely love that. I also love that you do it on Bitcoin. You don't have an own token or something like that, because as soon as there's like an own token involved in that, like I'm usually thinking like, might be a scam, might be someone thinking like, I have innovative thing and I want to sell you something, and then after 1 year I'm gone. But so I think we need that development, and when we look at that graphic that I just showed, I think we also have a lot of understanding that a big change needs a lot of developments, and the first might not work, the second might not work, the third might not work, but maybe the fourth worked, but maybe also the first works. Like we don't know. The TCP protocol is still around and still really dominant, I would say. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts around that topic and how I see it. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, I think that's totally right. I think that's right on. I mean, yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, like, for example, the zero knowledge proofs, like that's pretty recent development. And that's something that would be much more difficult to build spaces without zero knowledge proofs. I don't even know how we would do it. So, so
Wait,
that,
what,
you know,
what is zero knowledge proofs?
zero knowledge proofs are, it's a way to verify some data really quickly with a small hash. Basically, it's like, so how we're using it with spaces is for subspaces. Like, so like if you own at Bitcoin and you have, let's say you have tens of millions of subspaces under it. So there's like 10 million names under at Bitcoin. So there's Mike at Bitcoin, Robin at Bitcoin, or whatever. So you can verify that all those names can be linked to keys, and you can verify if I have the key for Mike at Bitcoin, you can quickly verify that yes, I own it. You can verify that very quickly with just with just a hash, a small hash. So that's a zero knowledge proof, is that you don't need all the data to verify that like that I own, like I do own Mike at Bitcoin. Here's my key. It proves that I own it.
And that's kind of the best innovations, where we just like have a lot of great technologies and we put it together and it makes that perfect puzzle piece, that perfect thing that we needed. And same with Bitcoin, and the same maybe with spaces. Would be amazing to see, honestly.
Yeah, I really like your point about the sovereign individual. I mean, that's exactly what we're going for here, the sovereign individual. Like, money is super important for sovereign individual, and so is naming. You know, it's really important. So yeah, that's, I think this helps bring about that more sovereign individual. And I think your example of that guy who just pays with Bitcoin, accepts Bitcoin, but he still has the website, I think that's a great example.
Absolutely, because it works as long as the website is up. Because you
Yeah.
cannot take his bank account because he has no bank account.
Yeah.
But they cannot take away the website, and it's obviously like it's way more likely and way easier if he has like an address and he's listed there, that they like just like he doesn't pay his taxes, no, like let's take away his bank account and stuff like that. So is it already so much better that he can operate outside of the normal banking system? Like that's like a huge step forward. But for a full sovereignty vision, we need that last part also.
Yeah.
And yeah, there might be people saying, "Oh, why do we need that? I trust my government." But yeah, like there's tons of examples of why you should not always trust the government and why it's maybe a good idea to build those sovereignty tools, even though, like. What if we don't have to trust the government because they cannot give it, they cannot take something from us? That's the best trust you can have. Like not having to trust someone is the best trust you can have because you don't even have the possibility of taking it away. So I really hope that we kind of come to that sovereign individual future. Maybe an interesting question. What else do you think is kind of missing? We have the naming now, with spaces, we have Nostra, maybe with communication, with Bitcoin for money. What else do you feel like is missing with, like, maybe governments, maybe with other things for that sovereign individual vision?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think thinking about that and figuring it out would be great, for, yeah, whatever helps make people more sovereign is great. The only reason I know about naming is because I worked in naming for 10 years, like with DNS and stuff like that. And I know how important it is and where all the problems are and how it's exactly like a bank, like, needing to rely on, I mean, it's even worse in some ways, relying on that. So, and how important names are. And so that's the main reason I have focused on this, is because I realize this. So hopefully there's other people in other areas that, see similar problems and can help that.
Absolutely, yeah, really cool. I have one question that each of my guests get. What can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
Besides Bitcoin, well, I'm also bringing back Friendster. Friendster, the old social networking site. I am relaunching that and bringing it back. So, yeah, I'm hoping to also tie in spaces to that. So each Friendster user will get a decentralized at Friendster username that's on spaces. So,
But you own Friendster right now, right? The domain.
yeah, yeah.
Cool. What made you buy Friendster to begin with?
Well, I actually used it when it first came out, and at the time I really thought it was cool. It was the first social networking site, and it was like, wow, this is cool. This is different. It seemed like a game changer at the time, but it was also a time when social networking was different. It was like more positive, and it was about connecting with people and being friendly and stuff. And then it kind of got poisoned over time, I think, by, I don't know, advertisers and getting clicks and ad algorithms to do stuff, and it became this like really negative space. And so anyway, I had checked Friendster off and on, the domain, to see what was happening with it. And at one point I saw it was resolving, but it was just ads on there. And I looked up who owned it, and it actually was somebody I knew from the domain business, somebody who was a user of Park.io. And so I reached out and bought it from him, and I thought, well, I'll bring this back. It might be fun. It might be fun to bring Friendster back. So I set it up and built it. It's up there, and I put up a waiting list, and it has, like, right now over 250,000 people on the waiting list, and I've been letting people in slowly. There's thousands of users now, but I'm trying to do it in a way to make it not just in the best. I'm trying to do it in a good way until I open it up completely. So.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a cool domain to have. I think you can build a lot of interesting stuff in there. We have end routine in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And it's a question where I just want to say you don't have to you don't have to say how your self-custody solution looks like. But he asked as a specific reason also, if you died tomorrow, would someone be able to access your Bitcoin? And he asked with the background of he thinks most Bitcoiners don't have an inheritance plan, and if they die, like their family doesn't even know how to access them. In that background, he asked for that.
Yeah. That's a good question. I hope they will be able to, but I think for me, it's a lot about like, I've kind of told, I told my wife basically, like, if something happens to me, here's the people I really trust, like you can trust these people and they know what to do. So reach out to them, and I hope you can do it. But yeah, I know it is a tricky thing, balancing security with that stuff. So.
Absolutely, yeah. It's something not easy to do, and everyone has to look at his own situation and try to figure out the best solution for that, because there's not like a one size fits all. And yeah, it's kind of good that there's not a one size fits all, because then there would be a lot of attack vectors also for that. Yeah, thank you so much, Mike, for being on. Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask you questions? I guess friendster.com is one address.
You can email me, mike@friendster.com. Or you can check out the Spaces Protocol at spacesprotocol.org. My company that created Spaces Protocol is Impervious, which you can find at impervious.com. And there's a link to Spaces Protocol there. And if you want to find me on Twitter or X, you can go to cypherpunk.com, and that redirects to my Twitter account. So yeah.
Oh wait, you own also cypherpunk.com?
Yeah.
That's a great one. I love that.
Yeah.
And you just redirected to your Twitter handle?
Yeah, for now. Yeah, until I figure out what to do with it.
That's amazing. I love the domain space also for some reason. The first time I really was getting aware of the domain space was actually with Michael Seyr, because he has like Mike.com, he bought voice.com. I think he sold it now. It's like a lot of interesting domains. I also love that at hope.com there's Bitcoin stuff, and even because Michael Seyr was on my podcast also, so like if you go on hope.com, I'm also popping up there, so I'm through Michael. So like I really like that I can access now one video of mine with hope.com.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I know Seyr. Yeah, he understood. He understood how, it's interesting that he's also into domains and Bitcoin, like they're very similar. So I think, it's a similar thing. They're digital assets. So.
Absolutely. Digital real estate. I think he always called it in the beginning. Yeah. Thank you so much, Mike, for being on. Also, thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye.